Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today, and this entire week is dedicated by a Torah Center silver donor, Miron Nisim, in memory of all those who perished on October 7th, and all the fallen soldiers since then who gave their life to protect us in the state of Israel. Hashem should protect us from all of our enemies, wherever they may be, whatever uniforms they're wearing, however they're disguising their anti-Semitism all around the world. As well, Breakfast in the Class is dedicated for the continued Refuah Shlema of Eliyahu Shlomo Farhi and Chana Batzim Afega, Chaim Rafael Ben Frida. The week of Kobe was sponsored by David Yash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to good today and every day. I think there was an extra sign inside. I don't remember it offhand. So, Be'ezrat Hashem, it should be a zechut for all those that are sponsoring the words of Torah wherever you may be. Please only answer Amen if you're hearing this beracha live. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nihya baro. Okay, my friends. So yesterday we mentioned this idea that the Sefer of Bamidbar, the book of Bamidbar, is always read in the lead up to Shavuot. And one of the ideas that we discussed is the idea that's mentioned that a person who wants to have and acquire the Torah needs to live a life where everything in their life is hefker, is free, is ownerless. That was the topic of yesterday's talk. And we expressed that ownerlessness, so to speak, was really about things in your life not being more important, right, or having disproportionate power over your decision-making process. So if your home was very important to you, and your car is very important to you, and your vacation is very important to you, and all these things are very important to you, there's really no room for the Torah because all these other things are very important, okay? So we talked a little bit about that. Today I want to analyze this from another perspective in the language of our Chachamim. Let me just share with you what the Gemara says about this point. Gemara in Eruvin says as follows: Amar Rav Matna. Rav Matna used to teach. Ma'u shekatav. What does it mean in the pasuk where it says Umimidbar matana, matana nachaliel, from midbar to matana, and from matana to nachaliel? Literally, it's a description of the journey of the Jewish people from this place, from the desert. They went to a place called Matana. From Matana, they went to a place called Nachliel. Except that the Gemara understood that each one of these places was not only the name of a geographical location, but rather also had a deep spiritual meaning with regards to the journey of every human being as they seek out perfection. So, Mimidbar Matana. What's the Matana? What's the greatest gift that God ever gave the Jewish people? The Torah. Excellent, right? So, Min Midbar Matana means we went from the desert to the gift, to the receiving of the Torah. Illustrating, says Rav Matna, Im Mesim Adam Atzmo Kemidbar, if a person makes himself like a mini desert, She'akol Dashimbo, that everyone walks through the desert, they walk all over him, so to speak. Talmudo Mitkayem Biyado, then the Torah, it is able to stay within him. V'im lav, and if you can't make yourself a midbar, you can't let people walk all over you, then you can't have the Torah stay with you. Now, let's just be clear. What does it mean to let people walk all over you? Does the Torah want a person to be a doormat? Does the Torah want a person to let everyone take advantage of them? Does the Torah want every person to be weak and to be this? And no, of course not. But, however, this line is something that we actually say every day in our tefillah. V'nafshi ke'afar lakol tiyeh. And my soul should be like dust or like dirt for everyone. So what are we saying? Are we communicating that a person needs to be always in the back, never putting themselves forward, never achieving, never taking risks, never believing in themselves? No. We don't mean that the person needs to be trampled on, and that's not what we're communicating. But rather, what we're communicating is that when a person lives with that level of humility, where they're not always worried or feeling that someone's stepping on their honor, right? That's a very different ballgame. I remember there was once an unbelievable piece of musar hidden in the ultimate Jewish grandpa joke. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, because you guys are all Baruch Hashem, you're not teenagers anymore, but there's a crusade going on in the world against something called dad jokes. Okay, dad jokes are considered to be very painful. Right? Oh, they're rolling their eyes, they're embarrassed that you tell a joke, right? So I remember my grandpa telling me jokes with my mother's father with great excitement. He used to love telling you jokes. Not all the jokes were always the most appropriate for the place we were in the Beit Knesset or whatever. But my grandpa used to love telling jokes. And I remember him telling me one of the most famous Jewish grandpa jokes. It's Yom Kippur. The Beit Knesset is packed. Everyone's very excited. It's the high point of the year. The rabbi goes up to the bima next to the Chazan, and he's doing the blessings during the Kal Nidreh. And before they take out the Torahs, in a show of motion, the rabbi goes down on his hands and knees, and he says in front of Hashem, Hashem, in front of you, I'm nothing. The Chazan, inspired by the rabbi's declaration of humility, also gets down on his knees and he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in front of you, I am also nothing. Anyway, some guy from the front row, gets down on his knees. He sees the rabbi and the Chazan. He feels, wow. He gets down on his hands and knees. God, in front of you, I'm nothing. And the Chazan turns to the rabbi and he says, who does this guy think he is that he thinks he's nothing? It's the ultimate Jewish grandpa joke, okay? Now, this idea, right, that a person has humility, the idea of humility oftentimes is something that I've come to understand is called, in the language of the kids, a humble brag. What's a humble brag? Humble brag is, look, I don't like to talk about it. Do you know what I always want to say? I'm just too nice because I'm my parents' child. When someone says, look, I don't like to talk about it, I always just want to say, so don't.
Virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling, excellent. Humble brag is, listen, I don't like to tell anybody, but I built this whole, I did this whole, I was the one. The other guys, they say it was them, but it wasn't them, it was me. And I love Rabbi, I don't do it for the kavod, I don't want anyone to know. And I always want to say, I could see that, I could see that you don't want anyone to know. But Baruch Hashem, I learned from my parents to be what's it called? To always judge favorably, to always see people in a positive light, even if the guy is doing exactly the opposite of what he's saying. So the Gemara is telling us that if a person wants Torah to stay in him, then what does he need to do? He needs to make sure that he's humble, that he's not bothered if someone steps on him. And what does it mean for someone to step on him? What does it mean to allow people to step on you? Every once in a while, when you're playing basketball, someone shoots a shot, and the ball decides, just because it wants to get everyone annoyed, that it's going to wedge itself right in between the rim and the backboard. So if you're at a basketball game with non-Jewish people, so one of the non-Jewish people jumps up and knocks it out. But if you're at a basketball with Jewish people, everyone is too short. Unless Amiel is there, we have no problem, right? But in a scenario where, what do? He's got it. You interlace your fingers like this, right? You take a couple of half-sized Jews, take another half-sized Jew, right? And we lift them up, right? And we raise them up and the guy gets the ball back. That's how it works. Hakol dashim bo means that people step on you, you allow people to lean on you, to step on you, to be able to get higher. Some people are never present when anyone ever needs them for anything. Oh, this guy's asking me for money. Oh, this guy, he wants me to talk to him about his business. I don't have now, I don't have the whole time in the world. Hakol dashim bo means nafshi ke'afar lakol tiyah. I always love pointing out. In the earth of this world, nafshi ke'afar doesn't mean that they step on you. What do you use earth for? You use earth to grow things, to develop things. A person says, Hashem, let people use me. For some people, using me means is a dirty word. It means that the guy he's taking advantage, he's this, he's that. No, I want you to use me. Use my Rolodex. Use my information. Use my expertise. Use my mentorship. Use the fact that God blessed me with money or resources or connections or whatever the case might be. So says the Gemara in Eruvin, that when a person wants Torah to stay in them, they need to make themselves steppable. They need to allow people to step on them. Now, let's try and understand what the underlying root behind that is. Because our Chachamim draw from this and other mikorot in the Torah a fascinating redirect of what Judaism actually is. And it's a funny thing to say to a bunch of people who took time out of their day to come to Beit Knesset, strap black boxes on their arms, okay, and not the kind from the plane, right? To wrap themselves in a wood prayer shawl, who then stayed afterwards to listen to words of Torah. Do I need to tell you what Judaism is? You're already in the thick of it. But my friends, this is exactly what Chazal were worried about. They were worried about the fact that you might not be understanding things the way they were meant by the Creator. I remember once a comedian said, if you ever go to a gym and you see people circling in the parking lot for a better spot so they don't need to walk from their car to the gym, your gym membership, he said, may not have been the wisest investment. Right? But all the time we do these things. Right? Is that not true? All the time we do these things. Why am I going to the gym? I want to be able to get on the treadmill and I'm going to walk 4 miles on the treadmill. But you're circling the parking lot trying to get closer to the door. Are you out of your mind? You sat down, you decided, I'm not going to order in from Uber Eats. But I need to remind everybody, whenever you're ordering on Uber Eats, my friends, even if it's labeled as kosher, that doesn't mean it's kosher. If you sell pork and shrimp together with cheese, I don't know who would eat that, but if you have pork, shrimp, thing with pat palter and chalav Yishmael, all mixed together, you could still list your restaurant as kosher if you sell kosher pickles. Did you know that? There's one item that's kosher in all your menu because you also sell kosher. So Uber Eats is not designed as a hashkacha. So every time you see something's kosher, double check, triple check to make sure. Second thing that I was made aware of, by the way, when you're in an Uber Eats order and you're ordering from an actual kosher restaurant, Uber Eats now has decided, you know what they're going to do? They're going to take stuff that you could get from another place and add it in so it looks like it's available at that restaurant. So you're ordering from, what's it called, Grill Point, and then they throw in, here's these drinks you could also order. The drinks are not coming from Grill Point. But if you look carefully, it will tell you that they're available from another retailer. But they've made it look now like it's on the menu. So a person needs to be very, very careful, because the same letters that spell the word Uber are the letters that spell over, which means a person who transgresses. So be very careful, my friends, when you Uber, that you're not over. Okay. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because a guy decides he's not going to order from Uber Eats. Why? No fast food for me. I'm going to go healthy. I'm going to make myself a salad. The guy starts making a salad. What am I going to eat with the salad? I need protein. I made the tuna fish. Get the tuna fish. What am I going to put the tuna fish? Mayo. You're out, honey. Yeah. Now he makes mayo. He's got the thing, got the salad, fantastic. He makes himself a sandwich. He puts on cream cheese. You could have ordered 6 pizzas and French fries. By the time you're finished with your meal, right? You ordered everything healthy, and then you got the Diet Coke. I'm guilty. I'm guilty as well, right? I love the best thing that they ever did on Diet Coke is they wrote vegetable extract. I'm like, it's basically a salad. It's a salad in liquid form. There's nothing wrong with this. And then what has bubbles? What's bubbles? Bubbles is air. We need air to live. A lot of times, my friends, we could be engaged in something, in a process, but actually not realize that we're heading in the opposite direction of the very practice we're trying to do. Look at the words of Rav Matna. He doesn't say that you can't learn unless you have this midah. He says that the learning that you did already, it won't stay in you. It's going to leave. It's going to check out. It's going to disappear. It's going to run away from you. After all the time you spent learning and growing, your growth will leave you. What's the key to maintaining all the Torah, all the goodness that you worked so hard to achieve? Say our Chachamim is midot, is character traits. I want to read you a couple of beautiful ideas that we have in this realm, in the realm of midot, and how important they are to Torah. The Gemara says in Pesachim, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Kol amit yaher. You have a person who's arrogant. Im tamid chacham, if he's a tamid chacham, chokhmato mistaleket mimenu. So the Gemara calls him a Talmid Chacham. It's not like if I call him a Talmid Chacham. I'm a nobody. But the Gemara calls him a Talmid Chacham. That's a pretty high level. The Gemara said about that level Talmid Chacham. If the guy is arrogant, you know what happens? All of his wisdom, it leaves him. Im Naviu. If the guy is a prophet, can we just recognize what level you need to be on a prophet? Who here has met a prophet? Correct. Nobody. We don't have them anymore. We don't have them anymore. Im Naviu, says the Gemara. He's a Navi. Nivu'ato mistaleket mimenu. He loses his nivu'ah. You know how long it takes to prepare yourself to become a Navi? And now you became arrogant and your nivu'ah left you? What happened to all the work I put in? The ladder of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair that leads you all the way to Ruach HaKodesh. All the work I put in. Gone in a second? Yes, says the Gemara. Gemara Nedarim. Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti says, Kol HaKo'es, a person who gets angry, Mishakeach Talmudo, he loses his learning, Umosif Tipshut, and he becomes like a fool. So much so, the Gemara tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he got angry in the desert, he forgot the halakha. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest Chacham, the greatest the Navi, excuse me, he lost it. He couldn't remember what the halakha was because of his anger. My friends, I want you to understand. I'm wearing a jacket now that if you come feel it afterwards, you'll see it feels like a raincoat. Okay? And I discovered what the term is when it rains on the jacket, and you'll see that the water doesn't go into the jacket. It sits there, beads up on top. You go like this, it shakes off, the jacket's not wet. That's why I bought it, by the way. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. Who could imagine not needing a raincoat where your actual suit is a raincoat? It's raining, everyone's like, oh no. I'm like, oh yes, bring it. Okay? You know what that's called? Hydrophobic. That's what it's called. Hydrophobic, you go like this, boom, all the water pops right off. The water doesn't let the water go in. My friends, when a person has bad midot, then their body becomes hydrophobic. You know, in the language of Chazal, we say, En mayim ela Torah. Torah is compared to water. When a person has bad midot, their heart, hydrophobic. Their mind, hydrophobic. You're pouring in the learning, you did the breakfast in the class, you listened to the Spotify, you reviewed it 17 times, you did everything. It doesn't matter. You lose it. Moshe Rabbeinu, he got angry about, even though it was the right thing to get angry about, by the way, he lost it. What we're learning here, my friends, is that midot and Torah are mutually interdependent. And when you don't have one, when there's bad midot in a person, what happens? All the Torah that goes into him is repelled. Even Torah that you acquired previously to this moment. Not that you're trying to get it now. Even that, the Torah is repelled by bad midot. So much so that our Chachamim tell us something unbelievable. Not only is the Torah repelled from a person who has bad midot, but the Torah that he has becomes twisted. And if you ever see a person who's using religion as a weapon against somebody else, a weapon to embarrass, to humiliate, to put somebody down, what's happening? Our Chachamim tell us that if a person has good midot, the Torah for him is Sam HaChaim, the elixir of life. But if a person has negative character traits, then the Torah that he has becomes Sam HaMavet. It's like taking Miracle Grow and you're spraying it on the plants. If the plants you're spraying it on are hydrangeas, Hazaku Baruch, you did well. If the plants you're spraying it on is thorns, what's your Miracle Grow going to do? Give you more thorns. So suddenly you take all the Torah that you know and you use it to be dishonest. And you use it to raise yourself up above everybody else. You'll take lessons. I remember once a guy sitting there, looking at this guy saying, wow, this man is so arrogant. What does he know? The guy never went to yeshiva. Basically, he took all the things that he had in his life, all the Torah he learned, and he turned it into an axe with which to chop up the other guy. My friends, the Torah that was in him had become dark and twisted. Instead of it being something Its ways are the ways of pleasantness. And all of its paths lead to peace. What did the guy do? He took the Torah, the fire, the light, the beauty of Torah, the water of Torah, and he drowned someone in it. He took the fire of Torah and he burned someone with it. So my friends, it seems like these two things are very important to be able, number one to have the other and the other to have the one, but my friends also to understand that really it goes further than that. And that's really where I want to end with you today. I want to end on this beautiful principle. Says let me find the quote. He says it over here. He quotes the words of the Vilna Gaon from Otzrot Pininei Torah. He quotes the Vilna Gaon. Ikar Hiyut Ha'adam. The main reason why a person is alive in this world. You ever wonder what your purpose was? Why you were brought to this earth? What is God expecting of you? Ikar Hayut Adam, says the Vilna Gaon. I'll tell you. You know what you're here for? Lehitchazek tamid, to always strengthen oneself. Bishvirat hamidot, in the breaking of your negative character traits. The imlo, and if you don't do this, if you're not breaking negative character traits, listen to these words. 3 words that ought to change your life. If you're not dealing with breaking your negative character traits all the time, lama lo hayim. What do you need life for? Of what purpose? Of what importance is your life? You know what you came to this earth to do? To refine yourself, your character. Now you have to build a family. You need to do a lot of mitzvot, give tzedakah, go to pray, study Torah. You need to keep the holidays. You need to build a ma'akeh, a roof on your, a fence around the roof of your house. You need to shake lulav. You need to do this. You need to do the seder. You need to bring the korban pesach. 1,000,001 things you need to do. But the purpose of all of those things is so that as time goes on, Shlomo Farhi, who has an anger issue as a kid, Yanni, Shlomo Farhi was an arrogant guy. Shlomo Farhi was a person who doesn't have patience. Shlomo Farhi is a person who's stingy with his money. Shlomo Farhi is a person who's always judging people negatively. Should judge people a little bit less negatively. Should come to a realization that there are things that are closer to sliced bread than him. And as time goes on, unless the person is continuously refining that, then they're missing the whole point. My rabbi used to say all the time, Rambam writes that if a person has a chance, he has a choice, he has in his pocket $1,000. He could give one ani $1,000 and make a huge difference in his life. Or he could give 1,000 aniyim $1. Which should he do? On the one hand, 1,000 aniyim, quantity, you gave more people. On the other hand, quality, the donation actually matters when you give a guy enough that it actually makes an impact in his life. So what should he do? Quantity, quality. What should he do? Listen to what Rambam says. Rambam says, give 1,000 people $1. You know why? Because as you reach into your pocket, again and again and again and again, you will have developed midat hanetina. Now, the first time I read the Rambam, you know what I thought he meant? I thought Rambam was basically teaching you good financial practices. He was like, look, if you could put away $1 and put away $1, so just make small contributions to your 401k. Just keep doing that, okay? Keep going, keep going, keep going. Because over time, you'll learn how to put money away. He was giving you a way to make a better long-term contribution to the poor, because if you learn to give, ultimately, poor people will get more money from you. Not from this $1,000, but because of what will happen afterwards. And that might be a part of what Rambam is telling us. But actually, if you look carefully in the Pisukim tell us much more than that. The Pisukim says when your brother comes to you, and he is poor, he's impoverished. We just read about it, right? In Bihar. Your brother's coming. He's lost his job. He has no money to put food on the table. Give your brother, strengthen him. Then it says, don't keep your hands closed. Don't make your heart hard. What's the Torah talking about? It's talking about developing spiritual muscle memory. It's talking about teaching your heart to be generous. It's talking about letting your hands learn to be quick to give a mitzvah. Not for the sake of future giving. That's not the point. The point is that the whole element of charity is not the way you think it is. God doesn't need poor people in his world. You know who needs poor people in his world? Rich people. And God could have given all the poor people the same thing he gave the rich people. I just want to make this point. Let's make this point. Yeah. Giraffes, what do? What do they eat? They eat grass, they eat leaves, they eat from the trees. Okay? Giraffes have a very easy time. You know why? Because while a lot of animals eat grass, how many animals can eat foliage on the top of a tree? Only one. Right? It's not an easy thing for them to do. Now, technically, you could have bears that could, that like a panda eats, bamboo shoots. Okay, fine, but it's not as common a thing. And even the ones that do, they do it from on the ground. A giraffe, no problem. God could have made human beings. I don't know if you ever saw. There's a certain tribe in Africa that they put rings on the neck, and over time they add more and more rings, and eventually their necks can be. It's crazy. P.S. If they then cut the rings, their neck can't support the weight of their head. Because over time, there's muscle atrophy. Okay? My friends, that is the mashal. God could have made us with very long necks, and you know what? We eat plants. I mean, it's not my favorite thing to eat, a salad, but you know what? We could have lived on that. Imagine not needing to work for food because you could go to Central Park and eat some trees. God could have made it that human beings had enough money to be able to eat, no problem, without ever worrying about it. Why did God make rich and poor? God made rich and poor so that each one could participate in the process of Shvirat HaMidot. The poor man in some way is working on his humility. The poor man is working on his gratitude. The rich man is working on his stinginess, on his tzarayin, on his inclusiveness. But everybody is meant to be operating in a symbiotic way. And in the end, Hashem's going to say to the rich man and the poor man, what do you mean you didn't have enough? I sent you money through him. That money wasn't for him, it was for you. I sent it through him. My friends, that is the point of the entire Torah. To elevate and escalate the ability to work on one's midot. Ladies, gentlemen, whoever's listening to this, today, we just counted last night 44 days at Omer, which means we don't even have a full week left to Shavuot. But you have some time to Kabbalat Torah. You know what it means to receive the Torah? It means for me to think, out of all the character traits that a human being has, which ones of mine are deficient? Which ones of mine could be escalated, could be elevated? And the truth is, by the way, all of them. Wherever you are on the ladder of that midah, there's always another rung. I want to share with you this last story, and with this I'll end. In the yeshiva in Mir, in its original, in its OG status, one night the boys are coming back to the yeshiva. On their way back to the yeshiva, they see people screaming at them, and they're yelling at them, and they're telling them to stop, and they got so nervous, these boys, back then, it was pikuach nefesh, anti-Semitism, today is there's a lot of anti-Semitism, but the anti-Semitism of that period was much more violent, in the streets of countries that you didn't have. It's very violent in Israel. Even though it's over here, it's a little bit more violent. It's not nearly as bad as it was throughout history in Europe, where that violence would express itself in people being killed, burned alive in their houses, even in countries where they had no war with the Jews. My friends, they hear people screaming, yelling, shouting. What do? They start running. As they're running, in the dark of night, they can't see who's yelling at them. The people are chasing, screaming, chasing. They finally get back to the dormitory that they were staying for the yeshiva. They run inside, they lock the door. Banging down the door until someone says, open up. He says in the native language that they understand, It's the police. They realized that the whole time, who was telling them to stop? Not regular criminals, right? The police. Police, unfortunately, in these countries oftentimes were as bad as the criminals themselves back there. But either way, they have no choice. They open the door. They start yelling, what are you doing? How come you're running? Are you spies? Are you this? Are you criminals? They said, no, we're yeshiva boys. We didn't know who it was. We couldn't see. It was pitch black. The guy says, license and registration, Yani. Every one of the boys goes back to their dormitory room. They get their passports. They show them their papers. They go through one, no problem. Okay, you're free to go, free to go, free to go. There's one student left. Who's the last student that doesn't have papers? One student left. He didn't live in that dormitory. Rabbi Shlomo Farhi. He didn't live in that dormitory. He tells them, I'm really sorry. I don't have my papers. I don't have my passport. I don't live here. This is not where I stay. I was just with the boys. We ran. They said, well, where do you have your papers? He says, they're in my dormitory room. Where's your dormitory room? In the other place, or a few blocks away. Okay? They take this guy, and they say, we're going to go with you now to your dormitory. You better have your papers. And they take him to the dormitory, and he, Baruch Hashem, is able to show them his papers, and the problem is averted, the crisis is averted. The next morning, the mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva, whose name was Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz, walks into the yeshiva and he says, he's supposed to give a speech that day. He tells the boys, I just want you guys to know, because of what happened yesterday, I was deciding whether or not to shut down the yeshiva. We contemplated closing our doors and never opening again because of what happened yesterday. Everyone was thinking, it was a thing, it was scary, but you're going to close the yeshiva because the boys ran away and the police, They said, what do you mean? And Yerucham was fire. He says, I went to speak to all the other rabbis, trying to decide if it was even worth keeping the yeshiva open after what happened yesterday. They said, Rabbi, what was so bad about what happened yesterday? The rabbi says, a bunch of boys are terrified, running for their lives, thinking some frightening person. Turns out it's the police. You each give him your documentation, you show him that you're good. There's one boy who doesn't live there, he lives somewhere else. And when the police tell him we need to see your documents, he was allowed to go by himself with the police to his dormitory room. How do you know he's safe? How do you know he's going to be okay? And even if you think he is safe, and you believe that they're cops, they're not trying to do anything, you know how scared you were 1 minute ago. How could it be that we have a yeshiva, that the boys studying Torah here could see their friend terrified, could see their friend go through something, and not stand with him, and not walk him back? What are we even doing here? Maybe the whole yeshiva is a failed experiment. He saw that lack in midot, in sensitivity, in caring. Not that they did something bad, not that they did something terrible, but he saw that as enough reason to contemplate shutting the whole yeshiva down. This is what we produce. The other day, I remember hearing a speech from one of the rabbis of the Reform movement. And he said, I think his name was Hirsch, I don't remember. He said, we have to ask ourselves, why is it that the Jewish kids on campus that are not standing with Israel now, the Jewish kids on campus that are standing with the Talit in the pro-Hamas demonstrations, they all come from our Reform synagogues and our Reform camps, and not to say that everyone from there is that way, but he was making this observation, this Reform rabbi. We have to ask ourselves, what are we teaching, or in what are we failing, that this is what we're producing? My friends, sometimes what do we need? We need an analysis in post. You find that your kids are acting in a certain way. Someone said, Rabbi, it's terrible, I don't know what to do. My kids are all entitled. And I want to say to them, yeah, it's probably not my fault. All your kids are entitled? Maybe there's something you're teaching, modeling, showing them, that's making them learn. They didn't learn the lesson badly. They learned the lesson well. They understood the assignment. So my friends, what is it that they were teaching? That's his question that's resulting in that. We have to ask ourselves the same questions. Not what he's asking, not to deal with what they're dealing with. But are our schools producing children that have good midot? You know, how do the people behave in our synagogue? A lot of times I hear people say to me, Rabbi, you know, I came to the synagogue, it's such a welcoming place. If I heard the opposite, I should ask myself if maybe we should shut the synagogue down. But if they're learning to be welcoming, then maybe we get it right. We always have to analyze in post. We have to figure out, are our midot improving? Because if they're not, something's broken. That's the whole point. So make a list. Do I get angry too quickly? And do I stay angry too long? How patient am I with people? How accepting, how loving am I? How critical am I? When I look at everything, am I always negative and cynical? Am I a person that gives generously of their time, of their resources? What kind of midot do I have? Am I loving? Am I nurturing? Am I approachable? All these are questions. And my friends, once you find those areas of growth, don't just say, that's who I am. Figure out how to become a better version of that. Figure out how to elevate those midot and turn yourself into this creation that God hoped for when He gave us the Torah. So therefore God gives us the parasha of Bamidbar before. So a person should realize, you know something, it's okay if someone steps on me to get a leg up. It's okay for me to help. It's okay for me to give. It's okay for me to develop somebody else. In fact, maybe that's the whole point of my existence. Baruch Hanei Le'olam. Amen v'amen. Rabbi Chananya.